I'm the bad guy. I'm the bad.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Across the Gridiron. I am here once again with Eddie Ekwo to break down what was another chaotic week in the NFL. We had tight games, we had shocks, we had it all, and we're going to try and break down the bits that really stood out. But Eddie, before we kick off into it, how are you, my friend? How's your week been?
I'm doing good. I had my first 10K race on Sunday, and we're talking a little bit about that. I think my body's still in shock mode after that, and I'm trying to get it back in shape. And there's nothing as combining that with the Dallas Cowboys mauling on a Sunday. Well, I think it was a Monday night stroke. But I mean, I went to the NFL for a bit of comfort, a bit of therapy, after my run. And well, I think week 9 did deliver. I think I really enjoyed the game, and we're going to talk about a couple of them. But there were some games that really stood out for me, and it just shows you why the NFL can be so unpredictable, right? And why we love it so much. But before we do that, guys, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. We really depend on you guys. That's how you pay us, so if you hit that like, hit that subscribe button, you're paying us as well. So we appreciate that, and share this with as many people as you can.
Yeah, paying us with clicks and with likes and just general emotional support more than anything. Just think,
Exactly.
for every like or share, that helps Eddie run his next 10K. It gives him the motivation he can to. It gives him the emotional support he needs. The Dallas Cowboys simply aren't. Now, obviously, now Eddie, when we do these videos, we do try and go into Cowboys Corner. We try and have a Dolphins deep dive, but this week we're a little bit tight for time. So I think we're just going to sum it up and just say the Cowboys and the Dolphins are useless.
Yeah.
We started the weekend with the Dolphins just being crap again against Baltimore. We're just going to tank the rest of the season, I reckon. And we ended the weekend by the Cowboys being equally garbage in a defeat to the Cardinals. So I think that's a Dolphins deep dive, and I think that Cowboys corner done. Are we agreed for that?
Absolutely. There's
Absolutely.
Nothing to be
right. Nothing to see here, nothing to talk about.
Movie.
Because we're on a bit of a tight deadline today, so we're going to move on. But yeah, look, one of the games. Let's talk about one of the games that was a bit of an upset. If I go back to the top, was it an upset? Yeah. The Vikings, the Vikings beating Lions. I was umming and ahhing if we should call it an upset, because I was umming and ahhing if I should pick the Vikings over the Lions in predictions. I didn't. I went with the Lions, which is obviously more for me. But yes, the Minnesota Vikings beat the Detroit Lions 27-24. This was, I suppose, a shock. The Vikings obviously went in with, JJ McCarthy was back in, right, after Carson Wentz, who had been covering him, is now out for the season, I think, with a shoulder injury. But yeah, I mean, they were able to beat the Lions, who took a bit of a hit here. This was this NFC is getting quite interesting, isn't it? How did you view this one?
Oh, I love this game. I really did, because as a fan, right? You kind of go into games with some preconceived, expectations, right? You look at a team and you're like, this team is so good. And then you look at another team and it seems like they've been putting everything with, Scotch tape and masking tape, just kind of like, stapling things together. And this Vikings team really shows you why Sam Darnold did so well last season, right? Because they've got a good coach, they've got a good system, and they've got a good structure. If the quarterback is just decent, right, don't do anything crazy, don't throw picks, don't fumble the ball, don't do all those unforced errors. They are always a competitive team. And one of the reasons is because they've got a very good defense, a very, very good defense. And that defense showed out, in this game. And when the Lions, got ahead, because the Lions were ahead in this game, and you're kind of thinking, yeah, okay, Lions, and all of that. By the second quarter, you're kind of thinking, okay, are the Lions gonna do something? And then the defense, really stood out. When I look at the way that the scoring, sort of happened, right? So the Lions, jumped ahead, and you're thinking, they're in business. And then Vikings come back in the first quarter, score 2 touchdowns. And then you go into the third quarter, and it's like, ooh, okay, what's happening here? It seems like the Lions are picking up again. They outscore, the Vikings in the second quarter. And then after that, it was punt after punt. It was punt after punt, by the Lions. And then you're just kind of thinking, okay, this is very, strange. But there's one thing that is becoming a thing, right? No matter how good your quarterback is, if your quarterback gets hit so many times and he keeps getting up from the floor more often than not, after a while, he's not a very good quarterback. And that happens to, Patrick Mahomes, and we're going to talk about that game, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, no matter who you are, because those hits are painful. I know I've never played, American football, but I can just imagine if you're getting drilled by 300-pound men, every so often onto the floor, at some point, your defense and coping mechanisms start to kick in, and then you start to feel things that are not real. Like you're thinking, oh crap, okay, this guy's coming, I better get rid of this ball, because that's what he wants. But I love the Vikings here. I love JJ McCarthy, because I think we were a little bit suspect about him, right? Excuse me. I think we're a little bit, thank you. I think we're a little bit suspect about JJ McCarthy, because he came out the first couple of games, he was looking a little bit dubious, and then Carson Wentz came in, and then there were rumors that he was actually healthy, but the Vikings didn't want to play him because they didn't think that they were getting a much improved replacement from Carson Wentz. And then of course injury takes that out of their hands, and they had to play him. And this is his real first season, right? Because last season was injured, and this is almost his rookie season. So I think that kind of win gives you confidence against a good team. If you're a rookie quarterback, and then you play well, you don't make silly errors, and you win the game, it's got to give you a lot of confidence.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I was pleased for JJ McCarthy to come in and win this game. Bless you again. I was pleased with McCarthy coming, because there was a lot of talk. They did, he was a high draft pick, but let's be honest, they did mightily fine without him last season with Sam Darnold leading the line. And they've looked better without him this season. Now, if you just look at his stats, which I've got up here, 14 out of 25, 143 yards, 2 touchdowns, one of which was a rushing touchdown, and 1 interception. They are steady numbers. But to go against a divisional rival in Detroit and come out with a good win like this, I think that's incredibly important for him and for his career potentially in Minnesota. It shows he can win these tough games, and he can lead the teams in these tough games. And I think for me, the most interesting thing is not necessarily the game itself. I think we're finally in a place now, we're halfway through the season, where obviously the standings are beginning to matter. And I think this one divisional game has blown the NFC North wide open. Right, as a weekend, it's been absolutely crazy, because if we look at it now, so the Packers currently lead the division with a 5-2-1 record, but they got beat in probably the shock result of the weekend when they lost to Carolina 16-3.
No, I don't feel that bad anymore as a Cowboys fan after getting thrown by the Panthers because we got absolutely demolished by them.
Hey,
So maybe
as a Dolphins fan as well, Rico
exactly.
Dowdle MVP.
Maybe we're not such a bad team after all. Maybe the Panthers are sneaky good. We just
No. You're a bad team. You're a bad team. But he said that the Packers are top. You've got the Lions are second with 5-3.
Yeah.
The Bears are third, who are also 5-3, and the Vikings are last with 4-4. So you could literally go into next week and it could be completely flipped around. It is such a tight division with the Viking and the Bears. It's good to see the Bears picking up another win over the weekend as well. They had obviously a great back and forth game against the Bengals. But I mean, this result has blown that division wide open, really. If it had been the other way around, if the Lions had won, they'd be 6-2. Vikings would be 3-5. You think, okay, well, this is very much favorite for the Lions bit, but there's not a lot in it.
Yeah, and more importantly, the divisional games, right, is going to be even more important in that division.
Oh, hugely.
Because this was a division game, so and that's going to count, right? Even if the record and the fact that the records are so close is going to matter who beats who, right? So the Vikings will be saying to them they could even still top this division, right?
Oh, definitely.
Depending on what happens in the next couple of games and what they do when they play Green Bay and play Bears. If they sweep the Bears, that could be telling for this division. So yeah, you're right. This is wide open. Has there ever been a division that all four teams make the playoffs?
I don't think. No, because it's only been in recent times. It's only been in recent times where they've really sort of expanded the wild card, haven't they?
Yeah,
so
that all three teams can make it, but all four. I'm not sure it's structured to allow all four to make the playoffs. I think.
So how many wild card teams go through? Is it 3? There are 3 wild cards in the conference. So in theory, it could happen. I mean, if you look at, let's see. I mean, if you put Vikings, who are bottom of division, at 4-4, you're not going to get. And let's say they have a winning record, which is still possible. If you look at the NFC East, the Commanders and the Giants aren't going to have a winning record this year, especially Commanders now have lost Jaden Daniels for the season, another horrific injury. So, all the best to him. I can't see them being in the playoff picture at all. You've got, no, the Cowboys probably won't have a winning record this season. Yeah. You go down to the South, and you've got the Falcons at 3-5 and the Saints at 1-8. I mean, Falcons possible, but Saints no. The only one I think that you are going to get a wild card team from this league, from this division, is the NFC West, because you've got the Seahawks and the Rams both at 6-2. You've got the 49ers at 6-3, and then you've got the Cardinals at 3-5. So it's not without the realms of possibility that every team in the NFC North could make the playoffs. But I think in likelihood, I think the NFC West will take at least one of those. And we mentioned, we've also mentioned the Panthers, who are 5-4. They are led by the MVP candidate Dowdle, who could basically run over every team in the league. Saquon Barkley Mark II. Let's move it. Let's change tack now. Let's move over to the AFC and let's look at the real big game in that division. It was the Bills and the Chiefs. Now this is the AFC Championship rematch that seems to be every single time. Now the way this has always played out between these two teams, season after season, is the Bills will beat the Chiefs in regular season, and the Chiefs will beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. Now we're halfway there because the Bills did pick up a pretty impressive win, 28-21. Josh Allen again. He is, for me, without question, the best quarterback or one of the best players in the NFL right now. And this was a dominant win for the Chiefs. It was more dominant than the scoreline suggested. But Eddie, obviously this is the big game. How did you see this one?
The Bills are just quietly doing their stuff. They're not in the national media. No one is really hyping them or talking about them. They've got the Dolphins and the Cowboys to occupy the airwaves. So, but what the Bills are doing, yeah, always. What the Bills are quietly doing is that they're efficient. And Josh Allen is not even being talked at in MVP. Context, right? No one is even saying, oh, he should be in the MVP conversation, even though he should. I mean, if you look at the stats for that game, he had a franchise record of 88.5% of his passes. Now,
yeah,
my maths is not as what it was supposed to be, but that is pretty good, in terms of passes and accuracy, right? And Mahomes had 44%, which was less than 50%. So it kind of gives you a scale of the two quarterbacks. And you're right, in the regular season, the Bills are like the Avengers. They're literally like, Earth's mightiest heroes. They just demolish, the Kansas City Chiefs. But it's not always the same thing in the postseason. So I think that always gives the Chiefs a little bit of confidence. Like, this is their 5th straight loss in the regular season to the Bills. So it's just like, it's ridiculous, right? How this game, and Josh Allen, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about the trade as well. But they didn't trade for a wide receiver. They didn't because for them, it's like, if we keep Josh Allen healthy, we've got a good offensive line that really protects him, because you don't get that kind of accuracy by having a horrible offensive line. So all of those things are there. They just need their defense, to make stops. And it seems like things are turning the corner for the defense. Because remember that game against the Ravens, it was you score, I score, you score, I score, sort of thing. And those sort of, defenses don't do well in the postseason. You've got to, at some point, start drawing the line and saying, right, if we keep our end of the bargain, we can trust our offense to go ahead and do something. And I love it. Josh Allen was making plays, and to be fair, it was close. The game was close. In that fourth quarter, the Chiefs do what the Chiefs always do, try and make a comeback. But the Bills were just like, yeah, okay, we've had enough. Let's shut it down. And manage the clock and the time, to win that game. But it was a good performance by the Bills.
Yeah, and I think the key word you used there at the beginning was efficient. Just incredibly. Yeah. I mean, you look at those. You look at those numbers. Yeah, 88.5% for Allen, 1 touchdown, added by 3 rushing touchdowns. Yeah, compared to Mahomes, no touchdowns and an interception. So the Bills were efficient. They shut it down. The worry is for them, it's still getting over the line, getting to that Super Bowl and losing to Chiefs. I mean, before this weekend, we heard many pundits still actually having Kansas City Chiefs as the favorites in the AFC, right? Because they started slow, building up, but still, I find it odd that a 5-4 team at this stage can still be seen as the favorites, but this is the Chiefs. You don't bet against the Chiefs. You don't bet against Mahomes. They will.
No.
God.
Yeah. No, I know, but the thing is that I think we're almost intoxicated by their history. Mm-hmm. I think that that history has brought them so much cachet and so much credit that people just can't get past their history. I mean, right now in the AFC standings, they're 2.5 games behind the Bills. They're also further down. I mean, unless people are expecting the Colts to implode, which I don't think is going to happen, right?
Well,
they might not get to the Super Bowl, but I don't think in regular season they're going to implode just because of the teams that they've got to play, their schedule, and all of that. So I think that the Colts will continue to do stuff. So I think the Chiefs have got a very difficult path, into that playoffs. Never mind their own division. You've got Denver.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to
Chargers.
say. I mean, yeah. I mean, you've got Denver. What a bye week.
Yeah.
So, but they're sitting pretty at 7-2. You've got the Chargers, who, and the figures with the Broncos. Not only if they had a bye week, they're on a winning streak of 6. Yeah, they are the most on fire, in form team in the NFL now in terms of winning streak. Chargers have won their last 2, and then you've got the Chiefs. I mean, Chiefs are only a game behind the Chargers. They're only 2 games behind the Broncos. So it could all change, and it still wouldn't surprise us to see them sitting at the top of the AFC West come the end of the regular season. But yeah, it hasn't been the steamroller season that we're used to from the Chiefs. But again, they've still got the players. They've still got players coming back from fitness. I still think they'll get into playoffs, but my early hot take was that they'll be one and done in the playoffs. Now, the thing is that would worry me if I was a Chiefs fan is that it's their away record, right? Yeah. Because they need, obviously, for those who don't know, obviously the higher seeds are obviously playing their games at home. The lower seeds will play their games away. If they are one of these lower seeds, as the record stands at the moment, they're 4-1 at home, but they're 1-3 on the road, right? So if they end up going to one of these bigger teams, whether it's Pittsburgh or the Colts or Bills or even the Patriots at the moment, and they're on the road to one of those games, I don't think they'd be the favourites. But let's see. Again, like I said, we never bet on the Chiefs, but they're making it harder to do that at the moment. But let's move on. We just want to focus on one more game in detail before we maybe have a flick through some of the other scores and look at some of the trades. And this probably was the shock of the weekend. And I remember last week when we were talking about the Colts and say, look, they're 7-1. You can only beat who you're up against, but they've got some tough games coming up soon, and including Pittsburgh Steelers. And you laughed and said, oh, they're not going to get much of a game out of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh aren't going to be the team to beat them. Roll on a week later, and Pittsburgh Steelers beat the Indianapolis Colts 27-20. So, your confidence, Eddie, made me predict the Colts in the predictions episode, by the way. So I'm blaming you for this one. Yeah, this again. It was a shock based on some of the previous records, but the Steelers' defense they were criticized during the week. They said that this was the worst defense potentially Pittsburgh, and so potentially I think was the worst defense in Steelers history. I think some people have mentioned. They took that to heart and they came out fighting in this game. They forced 6 turnovers. In this, and the Colts really couldn't get anything together. Jones looked like the Jones from New York in this particular game. Couldn't get any rushing at all. The running back, I've forgotten his name now. Jonathan Taylor didn't have any. 14 carries, 45 yards compared to how he's been doing this season. That's nothing. And hey, the Steelers showed up in this game, didn't they?
They did. And what do we always say about turnovers, right? If you give up the ball to the other team, you would struggle to win. I think it's only the Lions. Remember that season? It was last season, the game where they turned over the ball. I think it was like 5 times, and they still won that game. But once you turn over the ball, right, and this was the problem with the Colts in this game. They just kept turning the ball over, even when their defense, stopped the Steelers and were like, right, you go ahead now, go and score points. They just go and turn the ball over. And then what the Steelers were doing were turning those turnovers into points. When you got Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback, you don't give him short fields. Listen, as a Cowboy fan, I know fully well of Aaron Rodgers, right? You do not give Aaron Rodgers time on the clock, and you don't give him short fields, because if you do, he will punish you. There's no question about that. And so once, it started trending in that direction, I was like, yeah, I can't see the Colts coming back. At some point, it was 24-10, the score in this game. And when you're giving up the ball, there is no wonder that the running game suffers, because now you don't run the ball anymore. So Jonathan Taylor is not effective. The Steelers basically made the Colts one-dimensional, right? They made them like, okay, we're gonna take your running game away from you, and we're not gonna do it by our defense in the sense of stopping the run. We're just gonna make sure we punish you when your offense makes a mistake. And it was a weird game. And Daniel Jones, he was harassed, so many times in this game. And it shows you, and I was talking about it earlier on in the show, the trend, with quarterbacks. It doesn't matter how good you are. Look, we just talked about Mahomes, we talked about other quarterbacks, Dak Prescott. Once you affect the quarterback, you can affect the game. You can affect the game plan of a team. You can affect their productivity in the offense. You can just affect how the momentum of that game goes, because the quarterback, when it's a good quarterback and things like that start to happen, you lose the momentum very quickly. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things where you've got to give the Steelers credit. They saw a weakness and they stomped all over it. They were like, we're not going to let this pass up.
No, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, again, this is where stats can be misleading, or this shows you how dominant one stat can be. If you look at the stats from the game, you had Indianapolis, or the Colts, had 368 total yards in the game. That was 140 more than the Steelers. The Steelers only had 225 total yards. The Colts more passing yards, more rushing yards, more yards per play. But then it was the turnovers. Steelers 1 turnover and a fumble. But then it said 6 turnovers on the Colts, 3 fumbles, 3 interceptions. And you can have as many yards as you can. Jones, I mean, he didn't have his best game, as I said, but he could be having the best game that he can. But if you are constantly turning over the ball, and you're not putting yourselves in the best position to do that, and the Steelers were just with Rodgers were efficient. I mean, in terms of Rodgers himself, 25 completions out of 35 attempts. But Jones, you said they became one-dimensional. He had 50 attempted passes, 50 attempted throws in that game, right?
Yeah.
And 31 of them were hit. 342 yards. It was. They became one-dimensional. They couldn't run the ball, and the Steelers just swarmed all over them. Now, what in terms of how this impacts the season, who knows? Because I said the Steelers' defense has been poor pretty much all season. They've been criticized all season, whereas the Colts' offense has been praised all season. Right?
Yeah.
How is this going to affect it? Is this going to be a real turning point for the Colts and a downward hill spiral? Because they've got some tough games. They've got some tough games coming up. We did say that these sort of next run of fixtures is going to make or break them, right? To actually show, are these a team that can really challenge in the playoffs?
I mean, I still like a lot of things that the Colts do. I mean, if you take those turnovers away, right? And of course, I know it's hard, because they happen, right? But if you can't take it out, because it happens, right? But at the same time, I still think that they've got the ingredients to go and win games, right? They still got a good offensive line, and they didn't look like it in this game, but they've got a good running back. It didn't look like this in this game, and Jones has been efficient most of it.
He has.
So I think they make corrections. It's hard when you spot another team a few points ahead, right, to come back and do a comeback and win. It's hard. So I don't think Jones will be giving up the ball like the way that he did, in every single game. And as long as they do that, I think there's still good money to do well despite their schedule.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, again, we this is where again we go back and we look at the standings. Obviously, they're top of the AFC South, 7-2. The thing is, in their division, the team who are second, the only team who could really challenge them in that division are the Jaguars, who are just who have generally just been a model of inconsistency forever, right? Certainly in the last few years with Trevor Lawrence, and they're currently 2 games behind at sort of 5-3, although they won the weekend. Texans and the Titans are obviously nowhere near. They're going to be nowhere near the playoff picture this year. So I still think even the Colts, they are going to lose a few games in the running of the season. But they will still probably win the AFC South because you just don't trust Jaguar and you don't trust Jacksonville to chase them down. Steelers, on the other hand, they are the only team with a winning record in the AFC North. They're 5-3. But you've got the Ravens behind them, who look like who are a much changed team now that Lamar's back. They're getting some of their players back. They're 3-5. You still think the Steelers are more likely to edge out that division. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I think these two teams are pretty much are going to be playoff teams. But yeah, the Colts are going to have to show up a little bit more when they play against come up against other defenses who are in the same sort of mood that the Steelers defense were in, if they want to be serious contenders for the AFC. And when we talk about serious contenders in the AFC, we're talking about, can they take on the Bills? Can they take on the Chiefs or the Ravens if they make it? It's a big step up for them. So
yeah.
So let's just quickly whip down some of the other scores from the weekend, see if anything stood out. Obviously, we talked about the Ravens turning over the Dolphins 28-6. I'm not going to talk about that. 49ers beat the Giants 34-24. Chargers got a win against the Titans, so they're looking good. Patriots again won once again, but only just 24-23. Broncos continue their winning streak. Obviously, I said they were on a bye, obviously, didn't I? But no, Broncos continue their winning streak, beating the Texans 18-15. The Bears, an absolute back and forth game against the Cincinnati Bengals, who are a team in disarray at the moment. Bengals somehow contrived to lose that game 47-42. Now, if you want a high scoring game, you're going to have to go a long way to find better than that. Mentioned the Panthers beating the Packers. Rams continue their decent run with a 34-10 win over beleaguered Saints. We talked about the Jaguars winning, nicked the game, I think, shall we say, against the Vegas Raiders 30-29. And yeah, that was it. Oh, the Seahawks beat Commanders, which we mentioned as well. And obviously, the biggest talking point of that is Jaden Daniels being out probably for the season of a horrendous, dislocated elbow, something horrendous like that. Is there anything you want to spend a minute on for any of those fixtures?
I mean, I guess a team that we haven't given a lot of love is the Seattle Seahawks, right? We don't talk about them quite a lot, but it's Sam Darnold becoming the magic potion, right? Going into teams and then elevating those teams. I mean, is there something going to be called the Sam Darnold effect? Is there such a thing? Because he was at the Vikings and the Vikings had an incredible season, and now he's at the Seattle Seahawks. And I think they're now top 5 in both offense and defensive, stats. So, clearly he's doing something. They're 6-2 in that division, and they're playing well. Jackson Smith-Njigba, seems to be every week continuing to put in performances and productivity. The Seattle Seahawks are slowly just, under the spotlight, under the radar, are quietly doing the business.
Yeah, I mean, they're another team. I said 6-2. They're 6-2 with the Rams. I'm in the same division. 49ers one behind at 6-3, as we mentioned. Yeah, they've done incredibly well. I mean, the NFC is just incredibly tight, because you've literally got the NFC. You've got the Eagles, you've got the Buccaneers, you've got the Seahawks, and the Rams all at 6-2, right? And that is the best record currently in the NFC. No, but they really have done it. Sam Darnold's been he's continued this redemption arc of his career, and it's been great to see. And they are certainly contenders for the Super Bowl. They've got a game next week against the Cardinals, who are bottom of the NFC West. So you would expect them to move on to 7-2, looking good as we enter the second half of the season. So what we wanted to speak for maybe sort of like 5 more minutes before we cut this off. Let's look a little bit of some of the trades that are going off, because it's getting to that interesting time of the year. I think teams are going to be looking at this now, coming up to the trade deadline, and look at it in 2 ways. Either A, we need to bring players in to replace injured players, right? And we've seen that with Cincinnati, for example. Bringing in a quarterback to cover. And we are getting a few horrendous injuries at the moment, season-ending injuries. So there are teams who are maybe looking to push for the playoffs, right? And are looking for reinforcements to make that playoff push. But then there are other teams who are pretty much writing off this season now and trying to reset the books, because the playoff is not attainable for them this season. They're looking to rewrite the books, open up some wage cap, and trying to get some draft picks for next season. Now, there's obviously been quite a few pretty interesting deadlines that we've seen. We've seen the Colts have traded for the Jets for Sauce Gardner. We've seen your beloved Cowboys trading for the Jets for Quinnen Williams. We've seen the Dolphins have got rid of Jalen Phillips, and he's gone to the Eagles. So there's been quite a few interesting trades that have gone on this season. Is there anything that's sort of sticking out for you in terms of ones that really sort of, made you sit up and take note?
I mean, I think clearly the trade everyone is talking about is the Sauce Gardner trade. Where he's gone from the Jets, to the Colts, which is sort of reinforcing the Colts kind of posture and what they think about their season. They're thinking this is their chance, right? They're going to the Super Bowl. That's how they're looking at it. And so when you trade for a player like that, and they gave off quite a bit to get him.
Two first-round picks and wide receiver.
2 first-round picks, and Sauce Gardner only just signed a contract in the offseason for $120 million. So you're kind of thinking, "Ooh, okay," and that made him the highest-paid cornerback in NFL history at the time. But I think it just signals what the Jets, think about their season. Right now, in terms of draft picks, they're looking very good for 2026 and 2027. I'm going to be looking at that game, Colts against the Falcons in Germany, and we'll talk a little bit about that in our prediction. But that's going to be a game for me to look at and see how Sauce Gardner fits into this. But yeah, I mean, there were other trades, that happened. Dallas Cowboys, made trades, but honestly, I'm with a lot of people, with the Dallas Cowboys. I don't think that there is anything in this season that can be salvaged, and it's really a shame because, Dak Prescott, has been good, but they've just wasted this year, and they've traded for players that I think that would not make that much of a difference, right, to the defense, because the defense has been really bad. And trading away your second-round pick from last year, already declaring that he's the bust, because I think the alarm bells were ringing when he wasn't getting on the pitch, game after game, and all of that. So yeah, I mean, the Eagles, they traded for Jaire Alexander. I know he's a little bit older, but the Eagles for me are a team that understand the assignment in the NFL. I think they really do. I think the general manager, understands what this is all about. It's not about ego. It's not about, just being in the news. It's just about winning, right? And how can we improve our team? Every trade window, the Eagles are trading for players every single season. They don't just stay put. I'm like, oh no, we've got a good team. They're like, how can we make our team the best team so far? And they've gone ahead and they've done that in this trade deadline, as well. Bringing in players that are going to help them. So they're going to be a problem. So, yeah, it's been quite busy. I mean, I didn't expect to see a lot of blockbuster trades in this trade window, but I think it's been enough, for us to, kind of look at it and be like, yeah, okay, it's been an interesting one.
Yeah, so I think it'll be interesting to see how they play out. I think you're right with Sauce Gardner. This is a statement of intent by the Colts. They're trying to build a team for now to capitalize on the excellent start to the season they've had. And Jets, this is clearly the Jets just washing their hands this season. The Sauce Gardner move, you pay him all that money. He hasn't really repaid it so far this season. No interceptions or anything along those lines.
Yeah.
But and there's been no talk about him going either. So I think this was real sort of came out of nowhere, it feels like. But just quickly on the Cowboys, because I know we don't spend too much time on because we want to kind of wrap this up now. But Quinnen Williams, do you think he improves that defense? Because look, we talked about there is still a slim possibility of the Cowboys making the playoffs if you get that defense sorted, because your offense has been good for the most part this season. Does Quinnen Williams give you an opportunity to do that, or do you think he's just papering over some cracks and trying to set up for next year?
No, I call BS, on that. The Cowboys are not good in anything in the defense. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass, right? Every quarterback that plays their defense looks like a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I mean, every single one. And no matter how bad they are, they look at the Cowboys and they schedule. I'm like, that's a get right game for me. That's a game that I'm going to be looking good. I might be getting, a few more, dollars in my contract, as a result of my performance. Every quarterback is not leaving with anything less than 2 touchdowns when they play the Cowboys defense. You're giving, like, everyone is like, I've got 2 touchdowns. We're playing the Cowboys. Sign me up for 2 touchdowns. So it's like, what? I'm gonna borrow some money from you, but I'm good for it because I'm playing the Cowboys, right? I'm guaranteed 2 touchdowns, so don't worry, I'll come good for it. I just cannot see this making that much. This just too much, and I don't even know if it's the players. I don't even know if the problem necessarily is the players, it's the coaching, it's the scheme, it's the effort, it's there's so much to be fixed, right? And yeah, I think it keeps them in the news, because people are like, oh, the Cowboys trading for stuff, which is what Jerry Jones wants, which is all he ever cares about. But yeah, no. The answer is no.
Okay.
I don't think.
Well, we did say we will try and keep out of Cowboys Corner this weekend to save your sanity and also to save the time. But yeah, so I think let's wrap it up this week. Eddie, as always, it's a pleasure reviewing the NFL with you. We'll be back later in this week, hopefully with our predictions for Week 10, and we all get to laugh at how well Eddie's doing in this season's predictions. Thank everyone for watching. Like, share, download, all that kind of stuff. But for Week 9, Eddie, take us home.
Yeah, that's a wrap for Week 9, and we're looking ahead to Week 10 now. Some shocking results, but we're all fired up now. Postseason is getting close, so if you're as fired up as we are, drop some comments as well. And more importantly, ahead of our predictions, who do you think is going to take it in Germany? What do you think about the Chiefs? Are they actually one and done? But appreciate all of you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and also follow us on Twitter and across the Gridiron as well. And we'll see you next week.
I'm the bad guy. I'm the